So let's get started on market stats so this kind of sums up the last month, which was August. So I'm just going through Market Monitor again, and there's a couple things additional I want to share at the end here, but check out our MLS. So now we're up over 350. So we're at 358 for median price, which is up 13.6% from August of 2020. Now, as we look at the trends, I mean, we were hitting almost 18 to 20% back in the spring, but obviously we had a big run up in 2020 and kind of July, August, so, this area right here. So 13.6 is still a very aggressive increase in price. Now look what happened last year. So August, we jumped to 315, but then look for September, October, November. I mean, it was fairly, flat. I mean, for lack of better terms, I mean, all the way from August was 315. If I go all the way to January, it was 315, right? So when you look at that time period, August, September, October, November, December, January, I mean, that's a good 6-month run that we pretty much went sideways, right? So it's very interesting as we're moving forward. Our comparisons moving into September, October, November, December, that same time period is comparing to a very flat period here. So I'll be interested to see if we can if prices keep going up from where we're at, the year-over-year comparisons for the next 6 months are going to be fairly easy. And this number might actually go up higher than 13.6%. So I'd say, let's watch the next few months. I mean, we had this drop in July, but then, we jumped back up in August. So we're at an all-time high now in Charleston of 358 for median price. Price per square foot, kind of interesting on this one. So price per square foot, when we look at this, look at June, July, August, all flat at 185. So, we were rising here, but now we've kind of flattened out, which, I'm trying to figure out all the reasons why the sales price is still going up, but price per square foot is flattening out. So, this could be some new construction dynamics happening. I mean, look at what happened to lumber costs. I mean, lumber, for those of you who followed it, it was about 350 for what they call 1,000 foot of lumber. It went up to, the lumber cost went from 350 for 1,000 feet to over 1,700. And then where are we at? We're back down to about 350 to 400. So lumber costs, which obviously greatly affect real estate, new construction, I mean, it went up 4 or 5-fold and it's fallen all the way back down. So it's kind of amazing watching what happened with that. And now builders, should be able to be, from a lumber perspective, should be about the same price as they were, pre-pandemic. So this might be coming into play with this price per square foot that seems to be flattening out, whereas the sales price seems to be still increasing, with one exception of last month. Percent of original price, I mean, they still don't have this fixed, but we're over 100% still today. I mean, I'm sure some areas are 102 and 103%, and some are 100, some are less, but the average is over 100 still, the median sales price. So on percentage of original list price. Days on market, a little bump up last month from 3 to 4. I know that doesn't sound like a big one, but is that a start of a movement higher? We'll be able to tell the next month or so. If this goes 4 to 5, 5 to 6, then all of a sudden we know we're kind of finished that bottom at 3, which is about as fast as you can enter a house in MLS and get it under contract. But obviously that was that period of time. We'll see what happens next month, but we're at 4 right now. And again, the easiest way to explain this to clients is that, so median means half the houses are selling in 3 days or under, and half are selling in more than 3 days. So half the houses that come on the market are going under contract within the first 3 days. So if you're not one of those, then what are we doing wrong? And again, some more unique houses are going to take a little bit longer, but overall the median is 3 days. And you can look at this specific to your area. Yeah, and Sean McKay's mentioning on here, if you look at a specific area, it'll show you on percentage original price, it'll show you over 100%. They still just haven't fixed the all MLS. So days on market, we bumped from 3 to 4. If we look at months of supply, so on months of supply, we drop back down a little bit in August. So we're back down to 1. We were sitting, we've been at 1 most of the year. We bumped up a little bit in July, back down in August. So sitting right about 1 month of inventory. And again, relative reference, 4.3 months was pre-pandemic. And, we've been trying to get above 1 here for a little while. Now, the reason for the decline, back down to 1, I think it's related to homes for sale. So if you look at, so watch when I flip this over, that looks very similar, right? So we've actually had a decline again in homes for sale. Now, I don't know exactly where Market Monitor is pulling this number from, but the highest number, unless somebody on here can correct me, the highest number that I saw on ours, if I go active, all listings, the highest one I saw was 2,100. And that was on on a weekend day, maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago. Now, when I look at my calendar, again, I write down every morning what that count is. When I look at my calendar, we're as low now as we were a month ago, the first week of school. So we went up, we were going up, and now it seems like the last 30 days, we've kind of plateaued. And, we're right about 2,000 right now. So, the back to school, I'm sure that's probably slowing down some people wanting to put their house on the market. Maybe the increase in COVID is kind of slowing some things down. There's a lot of dynamics happening right now, but we were increasing for a pretty good period of time. But now the last 30 days, it seems very flat. So we'll see what the next kind of 2 to 3 weeks brings. But think about it, today, September 17th. What's realistic, for a closing date now is like a lot of these sellers, that if they're going to be putting on their house on the market, when are they moving? They're probably moving about Thanksgiving, right? I know it's, Thanksgiving's not that far away. I mean, we're basically a little over 60 days away. So, anybody sticking their house on the market right now, they're getting close to moving over, generally that holiday period, middle of November through the end of the year. So that could be part of the drag on getting new listings, is just that time period that they would be actually moving. Now, again, homes for sale relative reference, it's still, way below what we need to have a balanced market. So we'll watch the next few weeks, but I feel like it's been very flat over the last 30 days after a fairly good rise from the middle of May. Closed sales, we did over 2,000 again last month. So, 21, 26, that's, I think so since March, we've done over 2,000 each month. And, that's still a very good pace for the market. We'll see what the lack of inventory, if we can keep that up, especially once we, we're returning to somewhat of a more seasonal type of market. So I'm not sure we can hold on to that above 2,000 like we certainly did not, last January, February. But those were just the only 2 months that were kind of really hit the bottom. But again, January, February are usually the lows. So let's go pre any sort of COVID. It's like, okay, we were December, January, look how low we were here. So December, January, February were the lows of the year. So this is more of a seasonal typical output that we see. And Sean's asking, so from closed sales, we really never hit before 2020. We never really hit 2,000. We got close a few times, in the summers of 18 and 19, but we never hit 2,000. And now we seem to have very rarely get below 2,000. So, we've kind of flipped the script a little bit, but we are going to see some of the seasonality. We are going to go down. Why are January and February the lows? Those are because those are the middle of November to January contracts, right? Those are the holiday period contracts. So, that's very typical. That's not unusual to have these lows in here, during that holiday period. I mean, if you go back, historically, you can see it every year where the lows are, and that this is your typical seasonality. We're going to return to that, and it's just at a higher level right now. So you can see how much we've bumped up our sales, but you can still see that seasonal influence in the market. New listings. So we kind of fell off from 2,600. So 2,600 new listings in July to only 2,346 in August. And, that 2,600 in July is pretty close to, we did that. And again, keep in mind, this is pre-COVID, 2,600 in May of 2019 and almost 2,600 in March of 2018. So we're hitting those highs, but seasonally. So look what's happening here. For those of you who are like, man, it's a hard time getting listings. Well, we're starting to feel that seasonal influence, right? So, and again, we had such a dynamic run that maybe some of us forgot there is a seasonality that we don't control. You have to grab more market share if you want to do the same business, but you can see every year it's going to fall off the number of new listings, and we're starting that trend right now. Pending sales, we did have a bump up in pending sales in August. I think that's not a bad thing, because traditionally, if you look at the seasonality, what happens? It goes down, right? And you can see the seasonality in pending sales just like you can in new listings. Every year you can see that seasonality. It's just at a higher level. So again, to have a little bump up in August, that's a pretty good sign for the health of our market. Now, I tend to think that possibly the higher number could be maybe a few less houses are being sold off market, meaning before they hit MLS. I don't see quite as many, and correct me if I'm wrong, if other people are noticing something different, but I don't see quite as many active closed, active pending hitting MLS as I did maybe 60, 90, 120 days ago. So this bump up could be because a higher percentage of the sales are actually going into MLS up front rather than waiting on the back end. So, and Sean's asking about new construction. So if we go back and so up here, you can change to, previous loan or new construction. So if I flip, let's look at the new listings first. If I look at new construction, so here's new construction, right? Do you notice anything that looks like a pandemic in this new construction? I don't notice a thing, right? It is very flat. I mean, you don't, you have your peaks and valleys, but it is pretty much the same 18, 19, 20, 21. It doesn't look much different at all. If we look at the pending sales, and again, new construction only. So pending sales, you can see coming into 20, there's a bump up because look where we're in 19, we're struggling to hit 400. And now the bottom is pretty much, 350 or so. And with a big spike of pending sales, new construction in the spring, and then a big fall off. Why that big fall off? I think it's because they couldn't get these houses started soon enough. I look at these builders and they don't have enough labor to keep everything going. So they're struggling. They've kind of pulled back on the sales because if they can't build it, why are they selling it? And there's good point is that, we've expanded our MLS. So there are some changes that we've added, some areas into our MLS. So that, that can have an effect on numbers. But I think really what you're seeing in this area here is the fact that this fall off is because there's not enough contract labor out there to get these houses out of the ground and started. So why are these builders selling 10, 20, 30 houses in advance of how they can build them? So I think they are maybe more doing a drip out of properties for sale, knowing when they can actually start them and build them. So all of that is coming to play. So if we go back to all construction types, so you can see in here where we're at, and then dollar volume. So on a dollar volume perspective, so we hit over $1 billion again in August. So that is, March, April, May, June, July, August. That's 6 months in a row over $1 billion. We only had 1 month in the history over $1 billion, which was July of last year. Now, are we going to be over $1 billion in September? I honestly would be surprised. We'll see what happens. I mean, maybe we got one more month over $1 billion, but we're going to have this seasonal slowdown that we see every year on the volume as well. If you're not closing in many houses, you're not going to have that same volume. So, that $1 billion run, yeah, will we see it again? Sure. Next spring and summer, I would imagine we can, eclipse that number again. But I think you're going to start to see more of that seasonal influence. And again, even on volume, you can see the seasonality in the volume. We're just at such a massive level above. I mean, this gives you a good perspective. Look at how far above, we are the last 2 years compared to historical. And I know I've talked about this before, but we were doing, under 200 million, and now we're doing over $1 billion. So, and again, that's how agents get paid. So that's very important to us, how that looks like. So, we're 13% higher than we were a year ago. And I think we can still have some good months, and the lows will be higher than traditional. So that's all good. Joanne has a question. Can you tell how long properties are under contract before closing? Yeah, I don't know if I think you'd have to dive down into that MLS data to see specifically how long between those periods. But I can tell you from my personal business, I feel the lengthening of it too. And I think part of that is that the sellers are controlling, to some degree when they want to close. If a seller doesn't want to close for 60 days, they're going to tell the buyer. What the buyer's going to do? They're going to figure out how to close when the seller wants to. So, from all those perspectives, the sellers are still dictating, post-occupancy, pre-occupancy, like closing dates, so they still have the leverage on that front. So I think sellers don't want to feel rushed getting out of the house, but also sellers want to, maybe they don't know where they're going yet, so they need more time. So I think that, to Joanne's point, I think that's what's lengthening out, is that the sellers are dictating closing dates. Shows depending. So it's interesting. So look at this. And again, this is pulled through Market Monitor from showing time. So, from that aspect, we were in January, we were getting 12 showings before a pending. And then we've kind of fallen off down to 9. Now, it's kind of, we obviously had more inventory here. So buyers probably had more to pick from. So they were kind of exploring more options. So that's why you were just getting more showings overall. But we've dropped down to where we see it typically is like about 9 showings, 9, 10 showings. Showings per listing. I don't know what happened to their data. It's really funky today. So something happened here, but you can see from March, April, May, all this period here, we've dropped to 7 showings per listing. Now that could be partially because we do have more inventory than we did back here. So our inventory has gone up. Buyers have more to pick from. Maybe they're ruling some out because we don't need to go see it because there's better options. So it's interesting watching that showings per listing as well. So overall, yes, the market's still healthy. And still a hyper seller's market. When you have 1 month of supply, there's nothing telling me prices are at risk at this point, because you can't have that little of a supply and that high of a demand and not think prices are being pushed continually higher. Obviously interest rates are still steady. The stock market is somewhat steady. The financial reasons of why the market is stable is still there in my mind. Look, and again, look at rental rates. What are rental rates doing? Rents are going up still. And when people either have a rent payment or a mortgage payment. So if rent rates are going higher, some people are right on that edge, and they're going to find it's more affordable for them to actually purchase a house than to rent a house. So it's still, as the rental rates have a direct impact on sales. And again, for examples, if we go back around the recession, I watched, like in Hamlin Plantation, the townhomes, the run up, you could purchase a townhome and have an $1,100 a month payment, or you could rent it for $1,700, right? So what happened is everybody started buying. And then all of a sudden, if you looked about 2 years later, right before the recession, all of a sudden to buy, because the prices had gone up so high, to buy was $1,700, but there were so many available houses, the rent was $1,100. So it actually completely flip-flopped on rent payments versus purchase payments. So what happened? Well, then the market went down, prices went down. So then all of a sudden we were back to, okay, now the prices and short sales and foreclosures, you could, and lower rates, you could buy for $1,100, and the rent was still about that, but it dropped the mortgage payments because it's all about affordability for people. You know, it's like, what can they afford on a monthly payment? And so it's very important to watch what the rental rates are doing, but, you know, and you know, what vacancies are doing on the rental side, but the rent rates certainly have gone up quite a bit along with the purchase prices of homes. So, you know, it's having, you know, a common dynamic of prices going up. You know, and everything else that's happening out there, it's like with unemployment, all of that has factors. But the one number that I always tell people is like, watch this month's of supply, because that will tell you, it combines everything. It combines, you know, presidential elections and interest rates and unemployment and affordability. This is the one number that everything influences this, right? So if we go back in time, so let's go back. So at the heat of the market, look, we were down to 3 months pre-recession. And I know maybe just a few of us on this call were in real estate here, but pre-recession, we got down to right about 3 months of inventory. So what happened when we got down to 3 months? Prices were skyrocketing because the demand was so high and supply was so low. Well, then what happened in the recession? Look where we're at, 17 months of inventory. So I want to put that in perspective for everybody. 17 months of inventory means if you had 17 homes for sale in one neighborhood, only one of those was going to sell this month. So think about that for a second. Where are we at today? We're at 1, right? That basically means every house in that neighborhood could sell this month. You know, again, if it's priced right, every house can sell. That was not a possibility back here. So think about it as an agent. All right, let's think for a second as an agent. Back here, if you had all average listings and you were exactly in the middle and you wanted to sell one a month, how many listings, active listings did you have to carry? You had to carry 17 listings to sell one a month if everything was average, right? So how many upset sellers did you have out of the 17 each month? You had 16. So 16 out of the 17 sellers, you had to explain to them why their house didn't sell that month. So look at the different perspective of what's happening now. It's like, okay, if you want to sell one house as a listing per month as an agent, how many do you need to get? Probably about 1, right? So I just want to put perspective. And again, everybody thought it was good pre-recession. We're 3 times faster right now than we were even pre-recession. So this is a market that none of us have ever experienced. And again, it's not like all of a sudden next week we're going to be at 6 months of inventory. We're at this low inventory for a little while. You know, and as dynamics move forward, let's say our interest rates go up by the end of next year. Well, what is that going to create? Well, maybe a little less demand because it's more expensive to purchase the same house. But what is it going to do to the supply side? You know, think about it. Everybody who's purchased a house, you know, in the last 10 years, they've either purchased at a low rate or they've probably refinanced at a low rate. So rates are so low right now, what's going to happen in the future? If rates go up, you're going to create the situation where people are just going to stay in their house longer. Why are they going to leave their 3% interest rate to go to 5%? They're not. So even if higher rates slow down demand, at the same time, the dynamics are going to slow down the supply because people are just going to become even more stationary in their houses and they're going to live in it longer. They're going to renovate the kitchen, add a bathroom, whatever they need to do to stay in that house. So, you know, the short-term outlook is that even if rates go up, I don't see where the risk is on a price standpoint at this moment in time for real estate. If we have 1 month of inventory, you can't tell me prices are going to go down. There's no way. The supply and demand is still at a level we've never seen in real estate. So, you know, all of those dynamics come into play. But the months of inventory, if you only look at one number every month, look at this number. This is telling you everything all the other dynamics at play in the world, in the nation, in the economy, it all falls down to this number, supply and demand. And so this is the one thing to watch very closely. So there was any general questions on these, on the stats here? Because I did want to talk about just a couple other things that, we don't really know kind of what's going to happen, but, a lot of conversations going around, and this is not a political statement, but a lot of conversations going around about what could change in tax law. And again, I like to be the expert in the areas that pertain to real estate for my clients. Well, there's one item that's being talked about that could affect the way that, you can write off taxes in real estate, and it's that SALT tax. So right now, the way the tax law reads, on the federal tax law, you can write off up to $10,000 of state and local taxes, including property taxes, right? So when that was put into place, what areas of the country did that hurt? That hurt the areas with very high taxes, Connecticut, New Jersey, California, because they were limited, even if they had high income, a very expensive property, high property taxes, they were limited to writing off only $10,000 of that. Well, one of the proposals that's on the table is to eliminate that cap again, which is the way we were in 2015-16. So that's not anything we've experienced it in recent history, but the dynamics change where all of a sudden, if you're in a high tax area, it hurts you on a tax basis. Well, if they eliminate that, then we lose a little bit of the financial incentive of being in a low property tax area, because now you can write off all those taxes. So it's something, there's no vote in place, it's not in place, but it's something to watch. And obviously, if this does get passed, I will make sure in a market SAS, meeting to kind of point this out. But from a real estate perspective, that's the one thing that could have an impact on our area, but it also can have an impact on you. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is that we're all self-employed here. So as an agent being self-employed, you're supposed to pay your quarterly taxes, your quarterly estimated taxes. And again, I'm not an accountant, check with your accountant, but I can tell you what I'm doing is I'm watching this tax law because it's going to affect, for me, when I'm going to pay my county property taxes and when I'm going to pay my fourth quarter taxes. And again, this is not related to market stats, but it's a very financially important real estate agent. So if they eliminate the SALT tax and it eliminates that $10,000 cap, that's not going to be for 2021. That's going to be for 2022. And so in 2022 is when I want to write my check for property taxes and write my fourth quarter tax check to the federal government. I'm going to wait till January 1st to do that. Because if they make those changes, and again, I'm not an accountant, check with your accountant. But if they make those changes, it could have a big impact on you being able to write off those checks and not. If you write it in 2021, you might not get that deduction because that's not going to change for 2021. If it changes, it will change for next year. So you should build up those write-offs in January, not in December of this year. So it's just something that, again, not market stats related, but it's something very important to take into consideration as a homeowner and as a real estate agent who's paying quarterly taxes. You can control when you write your check to the federal government for your fourth quarter. And so, when you make that decision and you send in those, for your state taxes, I should say. So when you write those checks, make sure you understand if that law has, and I'm not saying the law is going to change between now and December 31st, but it could. And even if it doesn't, we already know what the law is for 2021, right? We're not going to be able to write off more than 10,000. There's still a possibility. We don't know by December 31st if that's going to change for 2022, but why not write it January 1st instead of December 31st? So I'm just saying, watch that part of the law because you can literally save yourself thousands of dollars by writing the check one day different. So, again, I'm watching it for myself. I'll watch it for everybody else, but check with your accountant because hopefully your accountant is giving you advice on when to write those checks because it could have a big difference for you personally if you write it in 2021 versus 2022. So that's just a side note to everything, but I'll keep everybody in the loop. Anybody else have anything else they want to share for the good of the office? I see John shaking his head a little bit. You good, John? All right, Laura. Hi, Laura. Everybody else in good shape? Any other questions on here? And again, I know at the end I usually throw in tidbits that aren't market stats, but I feel like it's something as an agent, it's like you got to keep up with everything happening outside of you because it can affect your income or your taxes. So it's important to read, thumb through those articles on your phone that mention what the changes are coming in taxes because it affects you, but it will also affect your clients. And again, I'm not saying to practice as an accountant, but don't hand everything to your accountant and depend on them. You have to understand the dynamics that are changing. So, because again, don't depend on everybody else to take care of you. You got to read these things yourself as well. So anyway, I hope everybody has a great weekend. Go sell a house or two and enjoy some time off as well. So we'll do this again the first week next month. I think it's set up for October 8th. So we'll do it and check out all the September numbers. So anyway, everybody have a great weekend and we'll see you in the office soon. Take care.